Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Money Matters webinar. We're so glad that you and your student are joining McGill's amazing and vibrant community of students, faculty, staff, parents, and alumni. My name is Cara Piperni, and I'm the Director of the Scholarships and Student Aid Office within Student Services. It's my pleasure to introduce my wonderful colleague, Jessica Lalonde, who is the Associate Director of the Student Accounts Office. We will be covering everything you need to know to ensure your students' financial wellness, including an overview of aid and award opportunities for your student, and information about paying tuition and fees and obtaining guest access to e-payment services. Jessica and I each have a prepared presentation, but we've planned for plenty of time for questions. Throughout the session, you can use a window, which is usually to the right of your screen, with the option questions. You're welcome to submit them in writing anytime, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. So without further ado, I'll introduce the services and programs of the Scholarship and Student Aid Office. Just share my screen here. You can see that, Jessica? Very good. So today my goals are simple. I'd like you to walk away understanding who we are, what we do, where to find us, how your students can tap into financial wellness and support, and how you as parents can help your students' financial journey. This is a snapshot of what my service offers, and I'll go into details of these services in a minute. But first, let's answer the question, who pays for a McGill degree? Now, of course, a McGill degree is an excellent investment, but of course it also costs money. These costs can be magnified for students who aren't Quebec residents, and especially for students who may be taking on debt. Our philosophy at McGill, which is fairly pervasive within North America, is that there are 4 pillars of financial support for a student to have the opportunity to pursue a degree for the first time. It's expected that parents will contribute to their students' cost of study relative to their financial capacity. It's expected that students themselves will bring money to the table through part-time work, earnings from a summer job, or perhaps what they earn from a scholarship or other recognition with money attached. If those 2 pillars are not sufficient, every Canadian province and territory has a government student financial assistance program. American students and students from other countries also have government aid programs, and they can bring that aid to McGill to help pay for their costs of attendance. Finally, we believe that it's McGill's responsibility to also contribute financial resources. Some are merit-based on the fact of academic achievement, and others are need-based, which means that after a student's other resources are considered and exhausted, McGill will give financial aid packages in the form of bursaries and/or loans and other interventions to help with that unmet need. We don't replace expected resources, but we supplement them. So let's talk about all of the opportunities and services of my office to help make these pillars as strong as possible for your student. First, we have our scholarship program. And here, terminology is very important because other institutions in other countries might use the word scholarship differently. At McGill, scholarships are based on merit. That is to say, primarily academic performance, although grades sometimes might also be combined with other achievements. Official McGill scholarships are notations on the McGill transcript. Some scholarships are automatically given. Other scholarships are based on an application process or a selection committee making those decisions. Some scholarships are one-time only, and others are renewable for each year of study if a certain criteria is met. To be frank, our scholarships are highly competitive because we have some of the highest admission standards, so every student coming to McGill is already the best of the best. My office deals with the entrance scholarship program for first-time first-degree students. That is to say, students coming from McGill directly from high school or cégep. At this point, entrance scholarship ship has sailed because these are connected and offered at the time of admissions. After that, though, any other special achievements or any grade performance while a student is here and registered at McGill, all of those kinds of scholarships are managed by your students' individual faculties. So it's really important to encourage your student to inform themselves. How does their faculty manage their scholarship program? Is it automatic? Is there an application process? If they possess a renewable scholarship, it's important for them to understand exactly the criteria that they need to uphold in order to successfully renew. Often that's a combination of the number of graded credits as well as the GPA of the fall and winter semesters combined. My office also administers 14 different jurisdictions of government student financial assistance programs. That results in about $80 million a year into the pockets of students in the forms of either grants, which are non-repayable, or loans, which are repayable. In Canada, like education, financial aid is a provincial jurisdiction for Canadian citizens and Canadian permanent residents. They vary greatly in levels of generosity, in rules and procedures. Some are integrated with the Canada Student Loan and Grant Program, others are not. For first degree students, most of the governments consider them dependent on parental resources, so parents also need to participate in the application process. Parental income will impact what a student can get from government and also impact the proportion of grants versus loans available to them. It does not matter that you live in a different province than where McGill is. And so it doesn't matter if you're an Ontario resident, your student is applying to OSAP, and they will bring their OSAP to McGill University. For our American families, McGill also voluntarily participates in the U.S. federal loan program, also known as Title IV. So American students can get subsidized and unsubsidized direct loans, as well as Grad Plus and Parent Plus loans. An American student can get loans regardless of their financial capacity, but expected family contribution will establish what portion of a student's loans will have their interest subsidized by the U.S. government. McGill has the highest number of Americans on government aid than any school in the world outside of the U.S. In fact, 1 out of every 3 of our full-time undergraduate students who have access to government aid, primarily Canadians and Americans, do employ that aid. So my team is available and has expertise for Canadian Americans to figure out if they're eligible, what jurisdiction they should be applying to, how to apply for an appeal, what supporting documentation is required, and getting recognized for any special situations. We confirm your students' enrollment to their government so payments can be released. We help students gain interest-free status of prior loans if they're not current loan borrowers, and we offer guidance around repayments of loans. McGill also has its own institutional financial aid program. We really strive for student diversity and believe that access to a McGill degree should not be dependent on a student's financial capacity. Again, we don't replace parental contribution, government aid, self-help, but rather we supplement it. Our aid program is possible due to generous alumni and donors, the university's own contributions from its operating budget to our program, and many student associations and government grants also help us manage this very robust program. We proudly offer all of our aid programs to all students, regardless of their geographic origin. So whether you're from Quebec City, Halifax, Nova Scotia, or Mumbai, India, your student can apply and be assessed for McGill's financial aid programs. Now, unlike our scholarship program, which is merit-based, i.e. on the basis of academic performance, financial aid is need-based. We have a number of types of financial aid. For students who are receiving offers of admission, they can apply to our entrance bursary program if they're coming from high school or CEGEP. And then once they're here and registered, our in-course bursary program and our in-course loans program is also available. Bursaries are non-repayable. Loans are repayable but interest-free while in studies. We have a number of other types of interventions, emergency cash loans, fee deferrals. So if, for example, a student is a government aid recipient, but through no fault of their own, there's a delay in getting their money from government, we can defer their payment of tuition and fees without interest or penalties for a certain period of time. Our work-study program is available to needy students, whereby we prioritize these students to be able to secure on-campus or virtual campus part-time jobs during studies. We incentivize our McGill employers to hire our students by giving them subsidies for what they're paying students. We have about 900 students each year participating in work-study and collectively earning over $3 million of part-time income. We have a number of other special need-based programs around mobility. So if a student would like to engage in an exchange at another institution for a semester, or there's an opportunity to take a field course semester, or maybe there's an unpaid internship which has been endorsed by their faculty as having great academic and experience value with academic oversight, but there's no pay associated to it. We want to ensure that students who might not have the financial capacity to participate can also apply to our office to be able to avail themselves to these type of enriched experiential learning opportunities outside of the classroom. To be considered for McGill Financial Aid, students must be full-time or deemed full-time, for example, with a recognized permanent disability, in a degree program, so that is to say bachelor's, master's, PhD, regardless of geographic origin. Students must be in satisfactory academic standing. If they have government aid available to them, they must have applied and taken the maximum available amount, and of course continue to demonstrate financial need. In order to apply, it can be any time in the academic year by Minerva application. And for some of the aid applications, such as for bursaries and loans, students will be prompted then to schedule an appointment with a financial aid counselor to have a discussion prior to a decision being made. If loans and bursaries are available, we tailor a package based on the timing, the types of disbursements, the method of payment for your students. One special note in regards to international students: your student might have received an entrance bursary around the time of admission to help prove financial capacity to immigration authorities in order to receive their CAQ and study permit. However, they are not available to apply for in-course financial aid to receive additional bursaries or loans within the first 12 months of their studies, because they have in fact proven financial capacity to be able to cover their tuition and their monthly living expenses. Financial wellness. No matter how a student is going to be funding their degree, everyone needs good financial habits. We offer one-on-one counseling with financial aid counselors around budgeting and debt management. We also have an online toolkit and a workshop series called the Frugal Scholar Money Management, which was developed with students for students. No matter what a student's financial situation is, knowledge is power. A plan greatly reduces financial stress. And this might seem so simple and obvious to you, but you would be surprised how many students are not equipped with budget skills. So just to give you a flavor of our money management toolkit, this is our Frugal Scholar Budget Pie. It helps to promote mindful spending habits, which can prove quite effective to set students up on a good path in managing their money for a lifetime. The big circle is the pie, so that's representative of all the resources that a student has at their disposal. And the way you cut that pie represents all the ways in which you're going to spend your resources. If you don't have enough slices, then one of two things have to happen. You either have to enlarge your pie by finding other resources, or you have to make some of your slices smaller in order to make it all fit. So this really promotes decisions that are value-based. It helps to recognize needs versus wants. And it's about how it's not sustainable to live beyond your means. So even to accomplish this depiction, one has to track their expenses, which is an eye-opening exercise in and of itself. This is really foundational to being able to build a longer-term financial plan. And these concepts, of course, are not limited to student life. Practicing these good habits are really important life skills. Parents, how can you help your student be successful? Well, certainly you're very much a partner in helping students be able to afford their educational pursuits. Either you have the financial capacity to help, or you can encourage your students to apply for other forms of financial support, and where applicable, participate in that application process. Have the money conversation. It's really important that you manage your students' expectations. They need to understand how much you can help them with, when the money is coming, so they can build a solid financial plan. Even if you think your student isn't listening, you certainly have great influence. Reinforce the importance of good budgeting and spending habits. Talk about how to track money that's coming out of your wallet. This will encourage mindful spending, whether it's your money or theirs. Use knowledge to safeguard your student from misuse of consumer credit, to be mindful of the difference between good and bad debt. But we ask that you don't do it for them. This is not how they're going to develop the skills. Often my financial aid counselors have a student appointment where they're reviewing their application for aid, and a student has no idea where the numbers are coming from because mom and dad did it for them. It totally changes our ability to add value within that 30-minute appointment. Be their memory though. Your student is going to be bombarded with all kinds of information over the next few weeks. In times of stress, they might not immediately remember that there are supports available. So encourage them to seek out our office if they're faced with financial stress, struggling to manage their money. Maybe it's now, maybe it'll be next February because this semester they'll be living at home. But also please know that Quebec privacy laws are something that my office has to adhere to. Our conversations with students are confidential, and that's really a good thing because it creates safe space for them. So we cannot discuss the details of their application or our aid decisions with any third party, including family, without student consent. This upcoming semester is a bit unique, but rest assured that we're offering virtual appointments as well as a limited number of in-person appointments, should that be your student's strong preference and they are in Montreal. To serve students who are in different time zones, we offer virtual appointments as early as 6 a.m. our local time, so students from all over the world can have the money conversation at a time that's convenient for them. We operate out of our downtown Brown Student Services building and also our McDonald campus. And I've provided you with our email addresses if you have information about government aid or McGill Financial Aid. That's our student.aid@mcgill.ca. Any questions about entrance scholarships for first-time, first-degree students can be addressed to scholarships@mcgill.ca. And at the bottom of your screen, you'll see our website, which is chock full of really critical information that I hope you will avail yourself to. So please remember that the Scholarship and Student Aid Office is here to help your student. I will not be addressing questions at this time. I will pass the baton to my colleague Jessica, but please do rest assured that we have time at the end to respond to your inquiries. Feel free to type them up as we're going so we can start looking at them and organizing in such a way that we can answer as many as possible. So I'm going to unshare my screen, Jessica, so you can take over. Thank you.
Hello, just give me a minute to put this up. Cara, can you see my screen?
Yes.
So, hi, my name is Jessica Lalonde, and I am the Associate Director of the Student Accounts Office. We don't actually have a front counter. Our front counter services are taken care of by Service Point, so you can always call them if you have questions. We do answer our own emails, and we have a website with lots of information. So I'm just going to touch on a few things throughout the presentation. I know you have lots of questions at the end. First question is, when have we billed? Well, we already sent out our first bill of the term. Our first bill went out on August 6th for students who were registered by that date. For any student who registered within the regular registration period, which ran until August 14th, we sent out a bill on August 17th. Both those are due on August 31st. Typically, we bill for the term the month before a term starts. This means that you can expect the winter term to be billed in early December, and the summer term, will be billed in early April. But we actually have a monthly billing schedule. What this means is that though we have issued the first bill of the term, I'm going to presume that most of the audience is made up of undergrad students who are charged per credit. If your students are adding and dropping courses, their balances are going to change. The basic thing I can tell you is that you only have to pay for what has already been billed. So if a student is billed and then adds another course after that bill is issued, it's just going to be picked up on the next bill and due at the end of the same month. So a common question we get is, I see charges recurring on the bill. I've been double charged for tuition. I've been double charged for the registration fee. That's not actually the case. What has happened is that the student has added or dropped courses, and you are seeing those credits reversing on and off of the account. Also, a heads up for anyone who will be in residence this fall is that the housing charges will only be viewable on the September bill, as well as the food dollars for the fall term. For housing is charged even though you can see all the charges as of September. The rent will only actually be due 1 month at a time, and it's effective the first of every month. So we issue a bill, but sometimes we'd like to know what has happened on the account since that last bill. And so this is why we provide something we call the account summary by term. And so there's a difference between what's on the bill and what's on the account summary by term. The e-bill is a static document we issue at the beginning of the month. It never changes. It's like receiving your visa bill in the mail. You receive your visa bill in the mail, it's not reflecting any changes that have happened on your account after that date. Next to the bills, when you're looking at them on the right-hand side, we have something called inserts. These are documents that we would have inserted into an envelope way back in the day that had extra information. So at this time of year, there's extra information about the Student Society health and dental insurance plans, or about the fees charged to students who are part of the Student Society of McGill University, which is all undergrads on the downtown campus. So we do understand that bills are issued, but you want to know what happens afterwards. That's the account summary by term. The account summary by term is today's balance. So sometimes you're going to see there's a discrepancy between what's on the bill and what's on the account summary by term. And this is because things have happened on the account since that bill has been issued. If you don't know what to pay because there's difference between those two things, you can always pay the lower balance between the two. So if you have your e-bill and your account summary by term balance is lower, this is because there's either been a payment of some kind or perhaps a student has dropped a course. There's not as much owing anymore, so you can pay the lower balance that's seen on the account summary by term. But in the inverse situation where the e-bill is lower and the account summary by term is higher, this typically happens because a student has done something like add a course, or we've hit the first of the month and a student is in residence and now their residence is included on their account. So now because we haven't billed yet for those new charges, you don't need to pay them right away, and you can pay the lower amount as seen on the e-bill. Next question we get is always, how do we pay? 90 to 94% of our students pay by internet banking from Canadian bank accounts. Very simple to set up. You set up McGill as a new payee or a new bill. We are registered with all of the major Canadian banks, as well as lots of credit and trust funds across the country. It's really important that when you're setting up the bill, it's going to ask for an account number that you want to pay. That is the student's McGill ID. For those of you who already have guest access, and we're going to talk about guest access in a minute, it is not your guest ID. It is your McGill student ID. Once the bill is set up, you simply pay the bill, and McGill receives the funds 1 to 3 business days later. The files are loaded at 1:30 in the afternoon. As long as a payment through internet banking from a Canadian bank is made by the due date, we will receive the money by the time interest is charged. I know some people don't feel comfortable using online banking, but if you do have a Canadian bank account, it is still possible to set us up as a bill. You can set up the bill directly with the teller at your bank, and then you can pay either through the teller or through an ATM with your bank. You can still pay that bill, which is an electronic way to pay without you having to send a check. We recommend, if your bank does allow you to pay by credit card to pay bills, that you do not use that for McGill, because we do not accept credit cards. If you do pay the McGill bill by credit card, it will be taken as a cash advance and you're charged daily interest on that. For our international contingent, we have two options for payment, either through Western Union Global Pay for international students or CIBC International Student Pay. Both these systems work very much the same way. From either the Western Union or CIBC portals, and there are links on our website that say how to get to those portals, you get a quote. So you enter how much you want to pay in Canadian and the currency that you want to pay it in. It will tell you your different options for paying. Your different options could be bank transfer, which is a SWIFT or a wire transfer. And then depending on your country, you may have other options. From the States, you might be able to do a direct debit or ACH payment, which is usually slightly less expensive. And through Western Union, they've partnered with different types of payment options across the world. And you might have an electronic funds way of transferring the funds. Whatever the case may be, once you've gotten that quote, you have 72 hours to make the payment. Once you make the payment, McGill receives the fund 2 to 6 business days later. As a note, if you choose an ACH payment from the US, it will be at least 4 to 6 business days later, and that is because of the ACH network, which is unfortunately very slow. Sometimes, especially with Western Union, they have local bank accounts in the different countries, and so the transfer will be considered domestic fund money transfer as opposed to international, which is usually slightly less expensive. There's no charge by McGill for using these systems. Two things to point out. When you are making a payment through Western Union or through CIBC, if you're using the money transfer or the bank transfer, sorry, which is a wire, it's very important that the reference number from the quote be included in the wire payment, because this is how Western Union and CIBC reconcile those payments and send them to McGill. And the second point is that if you are going to make a second payment through one of these services, you have to get a new quote and you cannot reuse an old quote. First reason is because the exchange rates do change, and the second is the reference information changes. And if Western Union or CIBC is not expecting that payment to come in, they can't automatically reconcile it, and it will slow down the money coming to McGill. If you have already converted your money to Canadian dollars, your option is to use CIBC International Student Pay. They do accept payments directly in Canadian dollars, so they will charge you an administrative fee. Only in the cases if your currency is not listed, you can contact student accounts. There's information on our payment page on how to do that, and we will provide our direct banking information. The reason why we do not provide our direct banking information globally is because wires, when they come in, have to be entered individually. They are often missing information. Based on the number of international students that we have, it is not possible for us to handle all those individual payments coming in, and so we needed to find a way to manage the international payments. So we partnered with Western Union back in 2009, and we've been with CIBC for 3 years now. And Western Union and CIBC are two of the main, especially in Canada, payment options that all universities and colleges use for international payments. We get asked if we can send a check. It is possible. We don't, in normal times, we don't recommend it. During COVID, we highly discourage sending a check. We've seen that there is an incredibly slow turnaround on mail time right now. Even payments coming from the US have been at least 2 to 4 weeks to get to us. So So though we are still working remotely, we have someone going into the office every Thursday to enter mail. And so if you do send a check, it will get entered, but there will be a delay. We accept payment both in Canadian and US dollars. If you're sending a check in US dollars, we convert it to Canadian on the day that we enter it. I know, especially coming from the US, a lot of people have 529 plans, which is the equivalent of a Canadian RESP, and they will often mail us a check, and that's fine, we can accept it. Just note that it will be slow to reach us. We do not accept, even in normal times, not just COVID, in-person payments at service point, cash, or credit cards. The only time that we accepted credit cards was when students were paying their admissions deposits or their housing deposits. So as Cara mentioned, we have to adhere to Quebec privacy laws. So the student is our client. No matter if they're 17 or 24 years old, the student is our client and they are protected. We cannot share information with anybody unless they give us permission. And so we definitely understand from a financial standpoint is that the students, especially younger students, are not necessarily the ones paying their bills, and often parents or somebody else is helping out. And that other person is definitely going to want to have access to the bills and to be able to ask questions about what's being charged and how to pay. And so we have something called guest access. This is access that the student can grant to a third party. It doesn't have to be a parent, it can be anyone. And it gives them access to either see the bills, the current account balance, the account summary by term, or to view and print the Canadian tax receipts come tax time. A student can also take away those privileges at any point in time. Guest access does not give access to registration, transcripts, or grades, only to the financial staff. And student accounts and service point staff will only be able to respond to questions from their guests only for the access that they've been granted. So for example, I can tell you how many credits a student is registered in, because based on the amount of tuition they're being charged and the tuition rates on our website, that's something we could work out, is how many credits they're registered in. However, I couldn't confirm how many courses that is or which courses they are. It's very easy to set up guest access. The student does this through the student accounts menu in Minerva. They simply need to enter the name of the guest, email address, and secret word. And then 2 emails are kicked out to the guest. One contains a link, and the second contains the secret word, and that link needs to be used within 35 days. Once the guest goes through the process, they have to enter some personal information like date of birth and address. The reason for this is that we validate it against our database to see if you already exist in our database, in which case we'll assign you your McGill ID that you already have. And if not, a new ID will be generated for you. And guests will have then their own ID and PIN to log into Minerva. A student should never be sharing their McGill credentials to log into Minerva with anybody else. McGill has policies in place that say they cannot do this. This is why we created guest access, so that for the people who are paying the bills, they have access to that information that you need. It also is possible for a student to assign more than one guest, and it is possible for a guest to have more than one student if there's multiple siblings, for example, that are attending McGill. The other thing to note is that once the guest access is set up, is that guests also receive a copy of the email notification that gets sent out when the e-bills are available in Minerva to be viewed. So we have lots of information out there for you. In Minerva itself, you have the account summary by term, today's balance, versus the e-bill, which is the balance the day we issued the bills. You have another section called recent payments, e-bills, and unbilled transactions, which is another way of viewing that same information. We also provide tax receipts. Students can set up direct deposit for refunds, or if they have awards that are paying to their bank accounts, which is especially true for graduate students. And as I say, students can request refunds. As a note, a guest cannot request a refund, only the student can request a refund. Our website is a huge source of information. We have lots of FAQs, information specifically for new students, information on guest access, fee calculators, list of important dates, and that's usually what they direct you if you have further questions. So this brings me to the end of my spiel. So I'm going to unshare my screen. Cara is back.
Hello.
Hello. And then I'm scrolling through to see what questions we have to answer, Cara.
Yeah, so far it's I would say my area of specialty. So I'll just include a few. Now, some were common enough questions that we did post the audience question and answer, but I'll just quickly cover those until we receive more questions. And again, folks are very welcome to use the question section on the right-hand side of their screen to input your inquiry. So folks were wondering what the deadline was for their student to apply for the first time first degree entrance scholarships. So it's usually about a week following the admission application deadline. So that cycle is now over. Applications that a student would have to explicitly submit has to do with our major scholarships, which are renewable. But rest assured that our one-time basic scholarships are given automatically on the basis of grades, so your student did not have to apply for them to be considered. Another parent said that they believe their son had met the academic requirements for an entrance scholarship, but did not receive any news. So on our website, we outline in fairly great detail, school system by school system, what our entrance scholarship thresholds are, but it is always relative to the number of candidates that we have and the funds that are available. Not every course is considered, so it's not just the average from your student's transcript. If you have any specific questions, invite your student to email scholarships@mcgill.ca, and their file can be reviewed and answered that way.
So we have another one about that I think you saw you answered as well. My son going into residence only in the winter term, who do we have to contact and when will you have to pay? So definitely housing is the area that you want to contact. Just search for McGill Housing and it brings you to their main site. If they're coming into housing in the winter, their first bill, their first month rent would be January, and they would be billed in early January, due at the end of January. Unlike most landlords who want you to hand over the money on the first of the month, McGill works a little bit differently. Because our billing process is like we bill usually around like the 4th to the 6th of the month, rent becomes effective on the account on the 1st, gets picked up in the next bill, and then due at the end of the same month. I see that there was a tax question. So can US-based parents claim tuition fees against taxes? So I usually like to start tax questions with, I am not a tax expert. I cannot give tax advice. I do know that we only provide Canadian tax receipts. I do know people from the States somehow work accounting magic and use that to claim stuff on their taxes. We do not issue a T 1098T, I believe it's called. And so come tax time in February, we produce something called a T2202, which is the Canadian tuition tax receipt. And another question, how can we make sure that the payment for our semester's bills have been processed? So that would be your account summary by term. Going to the account summary by term is today's balance. So you can see if a payment has come through or not. Additionally, there's the section called recent payments, e-bills and unbilled transactions, and all, I think, like the last 2 months worth of payments are listed there.
I have a couple of scholarship questions, which maybe you don't see, Jessica, but did you want to continue? Okay. Do you have something else similar that you'd like to address?
No, go ahead and I'll jump in after you.
All right. So one question I have, are scholarships available for foreign, international students? Does it make a difference? So in fact, no. Our entrance scholarship program, as well as all faculty-based in-course scholarship programs, are available to all students. Our entrance scholarship program does identify by school system what our thresholds are for evaluation. And then once a student is here and being looked at for faculty-based awards, that's based on the McGill GPA, so everyone is working off the same transcript platform. Another question is whether scholarships for music performance is entirely based on GPA or something else. So the academic entrance scholarships are my office based on grades and sometimes other areas of leadership achievement. The Faculty of Music has their own entrance scholarships, which are performance-based and tends to be connected to auditions. My daughter received a scholarship, and how do we pay you with it? Presumably for tuition. So all scholarships at entrance tend to be divided in half and given one half for the fall semester, one half for the winter semester. Both payments are directed to your student's fee account. So those are processed in time for the fee payment deadline, and you would only need to ensure that the balance of your fee account less that scholarship payment is what you need to take care of in terms of your outstanding bill.
Yeah, so Cara, I think on that question, because I think I see them as well, this was there was also a question about scholarships paid to McGill. So they might be referring to external scholarships.
Okay.
So we definitely have students who come with external scholarships that might be benefits from their parents' place of employment, their lacrosse team, the Rotary Club. Those can be sent directly actually to the student accounts office, and we will set them up as a scholarship in our system. So it's fine, we'll receive a check. Most of the time they're sent by check. If they want to be sent by wire, you'll need whoever's giving the payment to send student accounts an email, and we can deal with them for wire information. There is information on our website. If you look for McGill student accounts, external scholarships, there's a section there. At this point in time, if you haven't already sent it to us and you were hoping to use it against the first bill, and the first bill is due on Monday, August 31st, if you have a scholarship letter that confirms how much the scholarship is, and again, this information can be found on our website, it is possible for you to send us an email saying I'm receiving a scholarship of $1,000, is that we will actually defer interest on the amount of that scholarship for 1 month while we wait for the payment to be received. And again, those details and who to email can be found on our website. So I think, Cara, the next one goes to you. What GPA do we need to have in order to have a scholarship?
So once students are here, registered, completes their first year of study, then they would be considered at the local level by their faculty for an in-course scholarship. The GPA threshold does differ faculty by faculty, and it's on the basis of relative performance of students as well as the amount of funding that they have. So it would be important for your student to inform themselves how their faculty scholarships work, whether it's automatically given, whether they have to apply for it, whether there's other criteria that they have to provide supporting documentation for. So it really is the local faculty that would be able to provide that information.
Yeah, and just going to skip back one I see I skipped over earlier. Is it possible to pay McGill tuition, et cetera, in US dollars to save the exchange rate commission at the bank? Only if you want to send us a check. And then you're looking at all the delays it takes with sending us a check, and we convert it to Canadian based on the day that we enter it. I believe the exchange rate we were converting at yesterday was 0.75 or 0.76. But if you're looking to send us a wire directly in US dollars, you have to use Western Union, Global Pay for Students, or CIBC International Student Pay. So this one's back to you, Cara. Can an international student apply for scholarship financial aid after the first year?
Yes, so for need-based financial aid, because international students will have proven financial capacity, it's after 12 months of study. So typically after their fall, winter, summer is completed, they are more than welcome to apply for our in-course bursary and loan program. International students can always apply to our work study, even in their first year of study, if they have a small amount that they need coverage for. International students are very welcome to apply and be considered for our work study program. I also see a question about our Inspire scholarships and bursaries. So Inspire is an Indigenous Canadian charity with which the university has a partnership. We've put in a significant amount of money for our Canadian students who associate and are affiliated with Indigenous communities and bands. The Inspire application is August 1st and November 1st each year for an undergraduate's first year of study, if they apply and prove their affiliation, they will automatically receive a $2,000 award in thanks for choosing the university as the place they're pursuing their undergraduate degree. All other students in degree programs, whether bachelor's, master's, or PhD, can also apply through Inspire for need-based bursaries, and they adjudicate with Indigenous jurors, and we process those decisions on their behalf. And again, we've invested a substantial amount of money into their bursary program dedicated to our McGill Indigenous students. This is yet another pathway for our Indigenous students to apply for funding. Equally, they can apply through McGill Need-Based Aid and meet with one of our financial aid counselors, and also receive an assessment directly from our office. So there's a number of choices available. For someone's daughter who's waiting back to hear, the August 1st deadline, I would expect that your daughter is going to hear within a week and have their awards processed from Inspire.
All right, so the next one again is for you. Do you have any recommendation for an app or online platform that can help students track and manage their spending? I could use the answer to this question too.
I generally don't like to specify any particular applications. There is a host of financial literacy, expense tracking apps. So I would just invite your student to take a look at them and see which one is the most meaningful to them. Some students really like to have all of the details and run their reports at the end of the month, and others would just like something really, really easy, take pictures of receipts. So it really depends on preferences and habits. But there's a lot of good apps out there, and most of them are free. So one should not have to pay for the service of collecting.
Next question has to do with fee residency. Being billed as an international student when they're supposed to be billed at a lower rate. It's a very common question. So it's actually because tuition and education is run by or managed by the Quebec government. They say that everyone has to be international until you can prove that you are eligible for one of the lower rates of tuition, which means documents. So you want to look for legal documents at McGill, and there's a whole page that tells you, depending on what situation you're trying to prove, which documents need to be submitted. So everyone will be charged international until their documents are submitted to prove the lower rate. Once the documents are submitted, especially at this time of year when you think we've got 5,000 to 6,000 new incoming students, takes a little while. It's usually 10 to 15 business days at this time of year for documents to be processed. However, we know this, and so we identify we like student accounts, identify based on a student's application to the university if potentially they're supposed to be charged a lower rate, and we've already granted them a deferral. We started doing this as of the 27th of July. So you need to ask your student to go and look at their McGill emails. Really important that they check their McGill email. That is how we correspond with them. If a deferral was granted to them, we've told them that. And what we do is we defer interest on the difference between what they're being charged now and what they will be charged once their documents are submitted. So if on the application to McGill, someone said, I'm born in Ontario, we know that you're going to be able to prove that you're Canadian out of province. And so we would have deferred interest on the difference between the international and the Canadian out of province rate. Those deferrals are seen on the e-bill and on the account summary by term. So the amount to pay is what has been billed less the deferred amount. And that is approximately what the tuition and fees will be once that fee residency changes. The same thing if someone's going from international to Canadian or Quebec. When that happens, the international health insurance is going to automatically reverse off of the account, and then they'll be charged the student society-based health and dental insurance. If the student does not see a deferral on their account and they're trying to prove a lower tuition rate, they can email student.accounts and tell us under what situation they're trying to prove a lower rate, and we can grant that deferral so they don't need to pay the higher rate that we know is going to change once their legal documents are submitted. Okay. Next one's mine as well, talking about how to opt out of health and dental insurance. So the Student Society Health and Dental Insurance, which you'll see is SSNU, PGSS, Macy's, or MCSS. Those are the four main student societies at McGill. they all have supplemental health and dental insurance. This is supplemental to provincial plans. If a student does not need or does not want these plans, they can opt out directly with the insurance broker, and it's studentcare.ca. When I talked earlier about the inserts on the next to the right of the e-bills in Minerva, there's inserts, and there's a 2-page document in there that gives all the information about the health and dental insurance, as well as how to opt out. If a student opts out by tomorrow, we will actually receive that opt-out from the insurance broker by the due date, so you can subtract that amount from what is due on August 31st. If you opt out after August 28th, but up until the 27th or the 28th of September is the deadline to opt out, we suggest that you do actually pay for it and then request a refund, because if it's not paid, then it will be charged interest. So I think the next question I already answered. My son is a Canadian who has done his entire schooling in BC. Why is he levied international student fees? Just because his documents haven't been submitted yet, or if they've been submitted, they haven't yet been processed. Also important to look at the account summary by term versus the bill, because the bill won't change, but you will see that change reflected on the account summary by term. Yeah, insurance got answered. So I will just add, on top of the Student Society health insurance, all international students are also charged the international health insurance, which is actually McGill managed or organized through McGill, and Blue Cross is the health insurer. There are very few exceptions for taking this health insurance. Exceptionally this fall, across the board, we added a fee deferral for everyone who has international health insurance, because we do realize that a large percentage of students will not physically be in Canada or in Montreal. So the deferral is in place. We highly recommend you go to International Student Services website to see all the information about how international health insurance is being managed this fall, because when you do arrive in Canada, you do have to confirm that you're here. And then your health insurance will be prorated for the number of months that you're here between September through to August, which is the coverage period for the health insurance.
I'll just add that a few folks were interested in seeing 1 or 2 slides that we've used in our presentation. So this session is being recorded, and the link will be available shortly, and all participants will receive an email with the link, so you'll be able to look at those slides at your leisure.
Yeah, and also just so you don't expect it right away, the link is apparently going out on September 2nd. Yeah, and that's when the slides will be available as well. And I just know from, like, I quite actually like Student Aid's website, and so I know there's lots of information about Frugal Scholars and stuff that can be found on their website.
Thanks for the plug, Jessica.
No problem. Not all websites are created equal. Do we have any other questions, Kay?
I don't see any in my view.
No.
We'll give folks just another few seconds in case you want to make a final submission before we adjourn.
Yeah.
Not seeing anything.
No. Any last plugs you want to give, Cara?
Information is power. Really do encourage your student, if they need an answer to something, check websites first, try to find the answers. Of course, our services are both available by email or by phone in order to answer questions as well. But it's really important for students to get accustomed to self-serve and do what they can to empower themselves with those answers. So that's a really important skill in a complex environment. But we're here when we're needed, and please do encourage your student to ask questions. We hope you have found our content useful. We know this is a really exciting time of year. There's a lot of transitions happening. Know that your students are in good hands, and this is an incredible environment with lots of opportunities, both virtual and in person, to be engaged with our campus, to be involved in student activities, to avail themselves to services So I hope your students will take full advantage of everything that McGill has to offer.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that as well, to say, again, we're all reachable. It's also, as I think Cara was talking about money too, is that everyone needs to learn stuff. This is like an amazing learning and growing opportunity for the students to be able to be independent and look for information on their own and be able to handle them on their own. And like, we both got kids, so we know the how difficult it is to let go. But it's amazing what they can do when you do give them that little bit of space to do stuff on their own. And also, please be patient with the university right now. I know across globally, we are living through a moment in history, but that moment in history means that like it's made everything so much more complicated. And so that the university, we know information is changing quickly. Information, we're trying to adjust to what's happening as quickly as possible. But I just know that has been the downside is that it has slowed down a little bit of some of our responses to stuff, just because there's so many people asking questions. So where possible, please make sure that you try and check our website to answer the questions. But then if not, we are definitely there, and we are not ignoring you. We're definitely answering phones and answering emails, and are excited to welcome your students to campus, whether virtually or if they are here this fall. So Cara, thank you very much for your time this morning. It was a pleasure to see your face after so many months as well.
Same to you, Jessica. I see we have a couple of last minute questions coming through.
Okay.
So we're just going to quickly address them in case it's important information for the rest of our audience. So regarding my housing bill, my son is still waiting to get his study permit. He hopes to be able to arrive in Montreal at the end of September. He related his information to housing. If he can't enter Canada, is he still going to be billed?
You're going to have to call housing.
Yeah. So Jessica receives the invoices from housing, but it's really their local processes that will determine how students will be granted postponements or be billed. So it'd be important to communicate to housing directly. If we overpay for whatever reason, I assume we can simply ask for a credit on our student's account.
Correct. So if you do absolutely nothing, the credit will automatically stay there to be applied against future charges. The only exception to that rule is if the credit is due to U.S. direct loans, whether Parent Plus, Sub, Unsub, or Grad Plus. Those we have to return overpayments. If it's any other type of overpayment, it can stay on the account. Alternatively, the student can request a refund through the student accounts menu in Minerva. It's fine for, sorry, there was a follow-up that carrying a credit over. It is fine if a credit carries over. What we do ask is that you not pay more than 1 year's tuition and fees. I know some people, when they find a favorable rate, we've had people who sent us 3 to 4 years worth of tuition. That's a huge liability for the university to be holding on to that much money. So we do allow students to pay up to a year's worth of tuition and fees.
Someone wonders if there's a better exchange rate from Western Union or CIBC, or does it vary over time?
It definitely varies over time. Whenever I recommend to anyone is check both every time you go in, because sometimes one will be better than the other. They each have their own algorithms on how they determine what exchange rate is going to be charged.
And if one does not have a Canadian bank account, how to manage? Is a bank transfer okay?
So if you don't have a Canadian bank account, again, international payments are primarily through Western Union Global Pay for Students or CIBC International Student Pay. The only time we would allow a direct payment to the university by wire is that if your local currency is not one of the currencies supported by either Western Union or CIBC. And on our payments page, it outlines all that information as well as the links to CIBC and Western Union.
Another question about whether U0 international students could receive scholarships. Yes, indeed. They would have been considered at the time of entrance based on their high school grades. And going forward, certainly after an academic year, based on their academic performance, they are certainly in contention for an in-course scholarship based on their own local faculty's criteria. And Jess, my daughter has a major entrance scholarship, wondering if she could receive other university bursaries or whether having a scholarship means she's ineligible. So scholarships are given on the basis of merit, bursaries are given on the basis of need, and students may be able to take advantage of both. So just because a student has a scholarship, they can apply to our in-course financial aid or other need-based aid programs. We will consider the scholarship as a resource that's available to your daughter, but if there's still demonstrated financial need, and you're not an international student who's demonstrated financial capacity in the first year of studies, then they will certainly be considered for how our office might be able to help.
So just one moment, Cara, we've reached 1 o'clock. Do you have a couple more minutes to answer questions?
I think we can stay on the line for an extra 5 minutes before the session closes. Thanks for the time check. Time goes so quickly.
I know. So we have one. How are the invoices distributed to students and parents? Do we have to log into Minerva as a guest to view the bill, or the bill be emailed to us? There is an email that goes out when the e-bill is available in Minerva. We don't actually email the bill itself. It's a PDF only available in Minerva. It goes to the student's McGill email address, and if they have a guest gets a copy of that email as well.
Can invoices be emailed? Did you answer that question? My apologies,
yes, I did.
as the questions are coming in. Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of important deadlines, any quick summaries before folks receive the slides? What's the most important date folks should be aware of at this time?
Pay the bill by August 31st. That is the first one. The next thing is the add drop period, which is the period to add and drop courses, get a refund on those courses, is the 15th of September. And then the 22nd of September is the deadline to withdraw from all your courses and receive a refund. If you withdraw after that date, there is no refund for those courses. So those are the dates. There is, I think it's mcgill.ca/important dates. Every single McGill date is listed there.
Awesome. Thanks for the great advice and summary.
Is there a bill to show what is due for the whole year, or is it only term by term for tuition and month for food and res? So there is nothing for the full year. If you want to know approximately tuition and fees for the year, you can look at the fee calculator on our website. It's based on 30 credits spread across a fall and winter term. And then, as I say, bill the month before school starts, but then if there's changes, it'll be reflected on subsequent bills. Rent is monthly. And then if a student is in a mandatory meal plan, the fall food dollars are on the September bill and the winter food dollars are on the January bill. Under the new student section of the student accounts website, there is a PDF in there that breaks down every month the different types of charges you can expect to see on the bill that month.
We also have a question, Jessica, about whether students are able to opt out of any charges.
So the Student Society Health and Dental Insurance, students can opt out of those. Again, the deadline is tomorrow if you want to not pay for it by August 31st. Otherwise, there's another deadline at the end of September. There are a small handful of student society fees that a student can opt out of. It is during, I think it's the 16th of September, and it goes on for 2 weeks. Only the student can opt out of them. They do so on the student accounts menu in Minerva. The grand dollar figure is somewhere between $30 to $50, depending on what student society. It's very important the students read what they're opting out of, because for some of them, if they opt out of the fee, they no longer have access to that service provided by their student society.
Excellent. Are all merit scholarships available to non-Canadian students? So individual named scholarships are usually based on donations. Some terms of scholarships might be specifically for Canadian students. Other terms of scholarships might be specifically for international students. So depending on how many different scholarships the faculty is in possession of, first and foremost, they want to consider all the students with the highest academic performance, and then they'll look at the profile of students and the profile of these individual scholarships and do the match as best as possible. But in general, our financial aid and award programs are available, and students, regardless of geographic origin, are considered for all of the aid and award programs.
I have a couple more guest ones.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I have a couple more guest ones. I'll just merge into one. Guests cannot be emailed the invoice. you're emailed a notification the invoice is available, and you have to log in to Minerva to view it yourself. And the guest access only gives access to the financial information. There is no access at McGill that will give you access to registration, transcripts, grades, anything else like that. Again, this is the independence of students.
So it's 1:05. I'm just going to
Yes.
end off with one final question as to whether
Mhm.
McGill offers financial literacy courses. So yes, this is all part of our Frugal Scholar Money Management Program, Financial Wellness. We offer Budgeting 101. We offer Debt and Credit Management. We offer, in collaboration with other units like Career Advising Services, how to find an on-campus job. So there's a host of workshops. These are published on the our website, Scholarships and Student Aid Office. Most are done virtually this semester, but there might be some in-person small groups as public health directives might allow. So it would be our website where your student can find out about those opportunities. And with that, we have run out of time. We really appreciate your engagement. We wish we could see all of your faces, but we love seeing these questions. You know where to find us if you have further questions. Thank you so much for your time and interest. And we wish for your student to have an amazing first year McGill experience. Take care and stay safe, everyone. Thank
Thank
you.
you.